Yes. Welcome to Greek Like Me, the podcast about all things Greek. I'm your host, Pamela Diodes Wood. Email us at stealthgreek@gmail.com to share comments, questions, and stories about anything and everything Greek. Our November 17th, 2025 episode was about the beginning of the end of the military dictatorship in Greece, the 1973 Polytechnic Uprising. When I posted a photo on Facebook in 2024 commemorating the uprising, my post got a comment from Bryan, the older brother of a close friend of mine. Sean told me that in November 1973, he was a teenager backpacking around Europe with a friend. They wound up in Athens at the time of the student protests. Sean didn't witness the army tank crashing through the gates of the Polytechnic Institute, ending the protests. But from his description of events he witnessed, we know he was there in the days leading up to November 17th. He talks about a protest march to Syntagma Square, broken up by the police, which happened a day or two before the student occupation of the Polytechnic. And he describes tanks on the streets of Athens, which weren't called in by the regime until November 16th. He's provided us with photos of the tanks taken by the friend he was traveling with, and a letter from that friend describing each photo. We'll post the letter and the photos on the website sources page. These personal stories he shares makes the chaos and danger faced by the students and their supporters visceral. I could feel it in my bones during our interview. Bryan is semi-retired, still working part-time in construction. He is the proud father of his son serving as a staff sergeant in the National Guard Field Artillery. Thank you for your service. Sean can be found having a ball at Renaissance festivals clad in homemade chainmail armor. There, he says, a lot of beautiful young women want to hug and kiss me for reasons that are a complete mystery to me. I can verify this because I've seen the photos on Facebook. We'll post photos of teen Sean and present-day Sean on our sources page and try to get one of them in the homemade armor because it's awesome.
Hello, Pam.
Hey, Sean, how are you?
I am well.
So I'm, especially after communicating with you before, I'm really excited to hear your stories. First of all, you were 19 years old when you went to Greece?
Yes.
And this was...
Okay, the reason I was in Greece, I had a friend, a traveling companion, who he was Scottish, and we wanted to travel together to Morocco.
Ooh.
But he couldn't go to Morocco because all he had was a British visitor's permit, which was only good for Western European countries. And he couldn't go back to England to get the full passport because there were warrants out for his arrest. He had been living on the streets and scrounging and getting by for a long time, and he had finally gotten busted for something that somebody else did. But yeah, he was looking at jail time, so he couldn't go back to England. But it was easier to get a full passport in Greece because the land route back was through Yugoslavia, a Warsaw, or not Warsaw Pact, but a non-Western country. So we traveled to Greece, applied for his passport, and then had to wait like 6 weeks for it to come through. And so we spent a long time just killing time, and one of the ways we would do that was hanging out at the American Express office on Syntagma Square, where a lot of young, international travelers would hang out. And so we were there one day playing cards, and we heard the sound of chanting coming up the street. So we're like, okay, something's going on. We hopped up and fell in behind this march of students who were marching to the Parliament building, where they placed a Greek flag on the Greek Tomb of the Unknowns, and then moved a little away, and somebody was giving a speech, and somebody from the Parliament building came down, grabbed the flag, ran up the stairs behind a wall of other guys, and the students ran up, and there was shouting going back and forth, and we're standing at the back of the crowd watching this, and all of a sudden, a wave of riot police swept past us into the crowds and started whacking hits. At one point, a cop was dragging somebody off by her hair, I believe, and a bunch of other students came up to try and grab her away from him, and he reached back, and under the flap of his coat, his hand went to his pistol, and I thought he was going to pull the pistol out and start shooting, and I was about 5 feet behind him, and he was crouched down in front of me. If he had grabbed that pistol, I was going to heel stomp him in the kidney, drop him. Now, what would have happened after that, I don't know.
All hell break loose, yeah.
But his hand went past the pistol and grabbed the short truncheon off of his belt. And I wasn't going to get involved in an international incident over people's, getting whacked in the head.
Yeah, terrifying.
Like I said, I was 19. There's a reason why they draft 19-year-olds. They ain't got no sense.
My gosh! And this was November already.
It was about 2 weeks before the uprising.
Yeah, so that would be beginning of
I don't
November.
remember the exact date of the uprising, but it was about 2 weeks before. And the students, fled, went down the street, reformed, and started marching down the street. And so me and Pete, we caught up with them, and we joined in, and we were marching along with them and chanting "Exodus Americanos" along with them. I don't speak much Greek, but I know what that means.
Yeah, get out, America.
Yeah, Americans out. I was chanting with them, and then at some point the police came in and attacked them again, and they broke up, reformed a little further down the street. We rejoined them, and then there was a flag in front of some store, and one of the students climbed up and was pulling the flag down. They wanted another flag after the cops had stolen their first one, and this time the police came through and swept through, and it was dispersed. So we had seen that, been in the middle of it, and then about 2 weeks later, we were staying at this cheap hotel. I think it was the Monica from the letter that I dug up. It was like a very inexpensive. It was like $1 a night in U.S. And a bunch of young people from all over the world staying in this very cheap hotel. And one night, a small three of the people that had been there, that we knew, came back, and they told us that the student uprising was going on, and there'd been fighting in the streets. 4 of them had gone down, but one of them had not returned with the rest. And so that was, if I had known it was going on, I would have been down there too. But that's probably just as well I didn't. But in the morning, the 4th guy was back, and he had a lump on his head and blood on his clothes. And he told us that he had found a guy who'd been, okay, I need to back up a little bit. The 3 that came back told us, that yes, they'd been fighting in the streets. The students, the police would come down the street, and the police, the students would run around behind them. They'd run around the block and get behind them. They were taking the buses, turning them sideways in the street and puncturing their tires to make barricades. They were building flaming barricades across the streets. item of note, they said that it was in a working class neighborhood, and the local people living in the neighborhood were throwing their furniture out the windows to add to the flaming barricades.
Wow. Wow.
That tells you a lot right there. That one fact.
Yeah. It's
And
just,
at one point, I think they were with a group of people, and they saw police, and they had guns. They were, I think they were with a group of students, and they were like a block away. I'm like, well, they've got guns, they're not going to shoot at us. And then they shot at them, and then they fled, and that's, they got into the chaotic street fighting. The one guy who came back in the morning told us he had found a guy who was shot in the leg, and all the stores have pulled down barricades, to close up for the night, but they weren't. I guess it had hit too quickly, and they hadn't gotten their barricades all down. Mm-hmm. So he dragged him into a shop. He used his belt to put it. The guy was unconscious. He used his belt to put a tourniquet on the guy's leg, and they were in there. And then a group of police came in, and he said they hadn't been issued billy clubs that night, so they had gone into construction sites and gotten great big hunks of wood to use as clubs. And he said that one of the cops was beating the unconscious guy, and the rest of them surrounded him. He was Australian, and so he was like, tourist. and then one of them hit him over the head and knocked him out.
oh, jeez.
He came to in a makeshift hospital surrounded by dead and wounded students.
Oh my God.
The official government tally was that 4 people had been killed, but the people that I knew and talked to had seen more than 4 dead people, just themselves.
Yeah.
So now it's morning, and you can hear gunfire. Scattered gunfire. So I went out on the streets, and there were a bunch of the Greek people out on the streets, on the street corners, and at one point this little gray truck with like a cage over the back of it and an open top came zipping around the corner, and out flies a tear gas grenade.
Oh wow.
And the cloud starts going. So I knew, okay, so what do you do for tear gas? Like, okay, you put a damp cloth over your mouth. Well, I had a bandana, and I was across the street from the park, and I knew there was a water fountain there. I didn't know which way the tear gas was drifting, but I figured, okay, get to that fountain and wet my bandana. And when I went across the street toward the park, I found out which way the wind was blowing.
Oh gosh, the hard way.
Yeah, so that was my first experience with tear gas. Then at some point a little later, me and my friend Pete, we went down to Syntagma Square, which was a few blocks away, and you could hear gunfire. But around Syntagma Square, there were a lot of tall glass-fronted buildings, and so the sound was bouncing. So you couldn't tell what direction the gunfire was coming from.
Scary.
We were a little nervous, but nervous but foolish, and we're still out there. And then I walked around the corner from Syntagma Square onto the street that led into it, and right in front of a tank. Like, I kind of dived into a doorway, and the tank rolled by, and it was not just a tank, but it was like a line of tanks going all the way down the street.
Oh my God.
And so I'm in the doorway watching this line of tanks go by. Most of the tanks had one guy on the 50 caliber machine gun, and usually 2 other guys behind him, back to back with him, one with a Thompson, one with a 45, watching the rooftops.
Oh gosh.
And then And then at one point, like one of the guys with the 50 cal fired off one round. And that's when I realized, okay, the gunfire we're hearing, they're not shooting at anyone. They're shooting into the air to intimidate people.
Mm-hmm.
And I did recover one of the cartridges from from a 50 caliber.
Oh God.
Yeah, when it fell down onto the street. And you can tell from a cartridge whether it's a blank or a live round.
Mm-hmm.
They were firing live rounds into the air.
Oh my God.
And of course, when you shoot a bullet up into the air, it's going to come down somewhere.
Yeah.
And when it comes down, it's deadly.
And that's a very populated area of Athens.
Yeah, I mean, the angle they were firing, it may have come down outside of the populated area. They weren't shooting straight up. But, nonetheless, they were firing a lot of live rounds into the air. Mm-hmm. So then we wanted to see, the area where the fighting had been. So me and Pete started heading down, ostensibly to get to the post office because we were going to be taking a bus out of Greece in like a day or two. Mm-hmm. It was like a cheap, hippie bus line basically. And I had given people my mailing address as post restant, general delivery, Athens. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to put in a change of address form at the main post office, ostensibly. Mm. Of course, but when we got there, it was not open because it was in the zone where the fighting had been. Okay. But we started heading down the street. Got down to the area. Periodically the lines of tanks would come by. Got down to the post office, which was closed. And now we're past that and into the area where the fighting had been. And there was, there were no barricades remaining, but there was charred debris around. At one point, there was a Greek man walking, a civilian, and they all wore the same gray suits. It was like a uniform of the Greek businessmen, these gray suits. Mm-hmm. And he walked past a policeman. The policeman said something. And the guy did not react or respond in any way. And the guy the cop was holding an M1 rifle, and he fired a shot into the air. And the guy, he didn't turn around, he didn't react, he just kept walking.
Oh wow.
So we get deeper into the zone, and the streets are pretty much empty down here. And then at one point, this Greek businessman in his gray suit comes kind of loping down the street, and a cop comes sort of loping along after him, and then a second businessman guy, a little more heavy set, comes down, and you can see he's scared, and he's turning around and looking, and a cop catches up with him with his little short truncheon and whacks him in the legs and body with his truncheon
for walking down the street.
Yeah, this is in the middle of the street.
But I mean, all he was doing was walking down the street.
Well, they were running. When they came into our view, they were running from the cops.
Yeah, I don't blame
them.
The
one guy was very calmly just loping along, and the cop, sort of casually loping along after him. But the second guy, who was after them, he was running down the street, clearly very frightened. Mm. And so the cop whacks him a couple of times, and we're standing there watching this. And then the cop turned to us and yelled something at us. I don't know what he's saying. It was all Greek to me. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know exactly what he said, but we interpreted it as being, "You should leave now. I don't want you to be here." And we agreed. So now we're trying to get out of there. And we're coming out the far end. We're coming through the area. We think, okay, there's a subway. There's a subway station. Our best bet is get a subway and get take that out of this area, because pockets of tear gas everywhere.
Get off the streets. Yeah,
lingering. And we get to the subway station. We go down into the station. Well, it turns out that the students had been sheltering down in there during the fighting, and so the cops had lobbed a bunch of tear gas grenades down there.
Oh my
So walked
God.
down the stairs into a cloud of tear gas, and coming, had to walk toward the light at the far end to get out the other side.
Oh my Lord.
And now, at this point, I am so saturated with tear gas. I have been tear gassed multiple times now at this point, and it's like I really can't take it anymore. So we're just trying to get out of there. At one point, I found I had a spent tear gas grenade. It was a gray canister that was labeled in English "Federal Riot Control Agent used before 1968."
Oh, good God.
Now, I had that, and I brought it back, and I no longer have it, but I did at that time. There's also it's almost like a long bullet-looking thing, obviously fired from some sort of a projector. And I wanted to collect that and have that for a souvenir too, but when I picked it up, more tear gas came out of it. It's like, no.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so we're, like I said, I am so saturated with tear gas at this point. It's like I don't want any more tear gas. And then about a block ahead of us, a column of cops, like four abreast, and there had to have been at least 100 of them, like marching in a column. They came in from a street on an angle, and then continued along in the direction we were going, and we're like, okay, let's follow them, because wherever they are, they're not going to throw more tear gas.
Smart move.
And so we got out of the area. At one point, I'm getting into some side incidents now. We ran into a woman on the street who, she was absolutely furious. She was like, stitch. And she was like, tell the world, which I would have loved to, but, I was a 19-year-old hitchhiker traveling around Europe. I didn't have the means to tell what was going on. Basically, I told some friends when I got home, but until, other than that, here I am now telling the story half a century later.
It still needs to be told. Yeah.
Yeah. A few other incidents. I didn't see it myself, but I showed you the pictures. On Syntagma Square, a lone man walked out into the street in front of one of the armored personnel carriers with newspapers in his hand and yelled something at the driver, and he took out his pistol and fired around him.
Oh, so the guy on the personnel carrier, he pulled out a pistol.
Yes, yeah. The civilian wasn't armed.
Okay.
He was just, in his gray businessman suit, and he fired some shots from his pistol. And the guy didn't move, and then he fired from some shots from a grease gun, submachine gun, American submachine gun, around him. Didn't move, and then they accelerated toward him while the gunner was firing shots from the .50 caliber, and the guy, when it reached him, he fell back onto his back, went between the tracks as it rolled over him.
Oh my God.
And then got up and ran off into the crowd.
Oh my God. What an incredible act of defiance, and then to come out the other end. I wish we knew who this guy was. That's unbelievable.
And there was an English language newspaper in Athens at the time, and it was written up in that, that it was noted in that article about what had happened too. So it was seen by many.
Yeah. Wow.
And I showed you some of the other pictures of tanks and armored personnel carriers that were taken from the roof of the place we were staying. Because the main drag went by from Syntagma Square. Yeah, so
You were right in the middle of it.
right in the middle of it. Yeah.
Oh my God, not what you expected when you visited Greece.
Nope. No, not at all. That was the most intense, um, the most intense geopolitical event I've ever been in. I've had some some near misses. I was in Kuwait near the end of the Iran-Iraq War.
Oh my God, Sean.
Um, and building playground units, which I saw pictures of one of them after the war, and it looked like it had been through a war.
Oh, you were there working in Kuwait.
Yeah, this was a um, like I say, I was there before the Iraqi invasion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I was in the Philippines back in the '80s when I was building the playgrounds for at McDonald's, and was missing some parts and wound up having to wait for weeks for the parts to arrive. And I outstayed my reservation at the hotel I was staying at, and they had a convention coming in, so I had to get out. And the concierge found me a one night stay at the Manila Hotel, which was where MacArthur had his headquarters when he was there. It was like, I don't remember how much it was per night. It was like ungodly expensive per night, and it had rosewood paneling in the room.
Wow.
And then a place that opened up in a high rise condo. One day I was sort of looking at one of the windows, and it was sort of the window was kind of inset. It's like, this place is built like a fortress. You could hold off an army from in here. Well, 1 year later, at the same time of year, just 1 year after, there was an attempted coup, and it failed. And the army units that had attempted the coup took shelter at the Hotel Intercontinental and a high-rise condo nearby. Well, guess where that high-rise condo was?
Oh my God.
So apparently, I was not the only person who noticed that place was built like a fortress.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I had when I was on the road, I had a real talent for being in the wrong place at the right time. But I hadn't developed that skill yet while I was in Greece.
Oh my God. It sounds like it. My God. And were you stuck in Greece then with all this going on? Or were you able to get out?
Well, no, our bus was leaving in I think 2 days or something like that. It was leaving very soon. Like I think this may have happened I don't know, Friday or Saturday night, and I think our bus was leaving on Monday. So, yeah. So then we got out of there.
Jeez.
And it was interesting when we went through Yugoslavia, which was really interesting for me because you've got policemen with red stars. It's like, oh my God, he's a commie. That person's a commie. They're all commies. I was making a joke of it. Pete was like, he was giving me grief, but I thought it was funny. And then when we entered Austria, across the border from Yugoslavia to Austria, they brought out the drug sniffing dogs, and this one Australian guy had smoking implements that he wasn't carrying any drug, but he had scrubbed them, but the dogs still picked up on them, so they pulled all of our stuff out, and everybody had to empty their packs, and I got some looks when I'm pulling out. He spent tear gas grenade and 50 caliber bullet cartridges.
Oh God. You must have gotten some puzzled looks there.
Oh yeah. That was obviously not something they were used to seeing.
No, or anyone else. And the place where you were staying was like center stage for everything. I mean, did you keep going back at night when this whole thing started?
Well, I mean, we were staying at, that's where we were staying at that hotel, and that was where we would go back to, once we had made our way through the battle zone and got back, that was where we went back to.
Wow. And then I mean, did you hear shots during the night, or did things quiet down?
No, I think that day the army had stormed the university. They took a tank and ran it backwards through the gate to knock the gate down, and had taken the university. So, and like I said, any place that a group of people were gathering, they were throwing tear gas grenades and firing the guns in the air to intimidate people. And so, by the end of that day, things had calmed down. So after that, there was no more. The next day there was no more gunfire or any of that going on. There was a curfew, which we violated to go down to a place. There was an ouzo wholesaler. You could bring empty bottles and get them filled up with ouzo. We had an ouzo party in which I became a mess.
Oh my God. I bet you all felt like you needed it after what you'd seen.
Yeah. I didn't need that much ouzo, that's for sure.
But this is wild, because you actually were witnessing almost the beginning of the end of the colonel's military dictatorship. That was like
yes. This was the event that led to their overthrow.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long afterwards, but I remember when I saw the news. It was, I was thrilled.
Yeah, I bet, because the violence, from what I've read, the violence against regular people who were caught outside or trying to get to their families or whatever was pretty bad.
Yes.
But what happened to the students, and how far were you from the university?
I'm going to say maybe a mile.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess I should say maybe 2 kilometers.
Yeah. But since we're talking about Greece.
Since everybody in the world uses metric.
Yeah. But that's interesting to me, because when you're reading it, it sounds like everything was happening just right there, and it just sounds like it was the violence and the intimidation was pushing out.
Yeah, they were looking to intimidate the entire city.
Scary. Very scary. That makes me think of ice. But yeah, very scary. So, do you have any more stories? What else did you see? Because
I think it pretty much told you everything I saw.
Well, I know I was hearing, from what I read, it sounds like they were people trying to get through on bus lines to go home or whatever. And I don't know if those are anywhere near you. I mean, you talked about the ones that they had pushed over and created barricades with. But that just getting around those neighborhoods was near impossible, because...
Well, I do not remember seeing any buses or really any civilian traffic at all on the streets.
Everybody pulled in.
It was all military. Tanks, armored personnel carriers, and the little gray truck.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? And then you said you ran down into the subway, and that was full of tear gas, so I guess nobody was using the subway either.
Right. The subway was not running. For sure.
They shut everything down.
Mm-hmm.
People were trapped in place.
Yeah, in fact, I'm trying to think. I don't remember seeing, for the remaining time that we were in the city, I don't think I remember seeing any traffic, any civilian traffic at all.
And a question about the hospitals that your friend woke up in. Were these military hospitals, or were these sort of makeshift?
No, this was a basement somewhere. This was some civilian basement that had been turned into a makeshift hospital.
My gosh.
He was laid out on the floor, and people were laid on the floor all around him.
Wow.
apparently, they found him. Some of the students found him, and the other guy, did he make it or not? Who knows? Um, but apparently they found him and carried him to that makeshift hospital, and that was, I'm guessing that was probably not the only one.
No, there apparently were scattered around the city, but what kind of supplies did they have? Even though there were doctors and nurses who were trying to run in to help, what kind of supplies did they have for people who had been shot or who were hindered really badly from the beatings?
Yeah.
So it's laughable that they were saying 4 people died. That just sounds
Yeah, I think more realistic estimates were more like 100.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very scary times. That must have been traumatic to live through that, or surreal.
It was quite a life event. It was, like I say, it was the most intense geopolitical event I've ever been in.
Than most people have ever been in. And if you go around those neighborhoods today, it's tourists all over the place, kids all over the place. And then to imagine the debris burning in the road and bullets, God knows where, hitting what. It's really scary.
Yeah, it was. And like I said, that was what brought down the colonels.
Yeah, just that level of violence against their own people.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, and will probably be smelling tear gas for the rest of your life.
I can't really recall what it smelled like. I remember what it felt like more than anything. When your eyes and your nose start running. Just like mucus, coughing out mucus because it's running down your throat.
Oh my God. And for them to be shooting it into enclosed spaces, that just boggles my mind because the students were sheltering in place in the subway, that they were shooting, that they'd shoot it down there like that for people.
Well, the fact that they'd throw it into a crowd of civilians who were just standing on the streets, watching what was going on in their city.
Oh my God.
Any place that there was a gathering of people, they would throw tear gas.
Oh my gosh.
And we're talking, businessmen in their gray suits, and and women just standing on the corner watching the tanks go by.
Everybody was under attack.
At one point, I was walking along the street, and the little gray truck was parked, and I walked by, and my eyes and my nose were running, and I just put my finger to my nostril and evacuated my nose in their general direction. And the guy saw me doing it too, and he just kind of grinned.
Protest sometimes comes in small gestures.
Yeah.
Good for you. Because I guess a lot of people didn't dare budge. But ultimately they did, because the colonels came down.
Yeah. One thing is, I was obviously a foreigner. I was obviously a foreign tourist. That's why when the riot police swept through, 2 weeks earlier, and we were just standing there, we weren't touched. They just ran past us like we weren't even there, because we were obviously not locals.
Yeah, that would have been bad publicity for the colonels, who spent the entire regime trying to entice tourists into Greece, strangely enough. So you were a valuable commodity. I don't know how they thought your experience was going to be good after watching what they were doing to their own people.
Well, I don't think they were worrying too much about that at that point.
No, not at all. My gosh. And your parents had no idea what was going on?
At the time, no. I mean, I don't know, if they heard the news reports. I mean, they knew I was in Athens, or they knew I was in Greece. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what their reaction was. I don't know, if they saw the news reports and wondered, like, is she in the middle of this?
What is our child doing over there? Oh my gosh, I can remember, I guess it was a year later when I became friends with your younger sister, Kathy, that she told me, oh, my brother was there. And this whole experience, because I had relatives that had escaped earlier in the regime, it was always spoken of in hushed tones, the adults around the table. And if one of us would walk in, they would try to change the subject if they were paying attention. It was like almost like a taboo subject because everyone was so traumatized by it. So I got to the point where I stopped asking questions and I didn't really have a good understanding of what happened until I was an adult. So even when Kathy told me about it, now I would have like, wait, okay, Sean, can we have a talk? But
and I would have gladly told you because, like I say, that woman who's like, tell the world.
yeah.
I was telling anybody who would listen, but like once I told my friends, like they didn't want to hear it again.
Yeah. I was at that stage of that age where I didn't want to know because I would look at my uncle and my aunts and the fear that they still had. It was something that I think scared me so much that
what is this unknown fear?
Yeah, and what
there's something that they're very much afraid of, and they're not telling you what it is.
That's it. And my uncle fought it as with guerrilla warfare during World War II. I mean, he was a brave guy, but he was a very happy, kind person. But occasionally, when they would talk about these things, it was like something would change, and that to a kid was kind of frightening. And I didn't want to know something really bad. It was weird, but now I regret that. I regret that I didn't ask sooner, that I didn't learn about it sooner. But I'm really grateful that you spent the time talking to me about it because
I'm glad that I got the chance to tell somebody again because if, like I said, it's been 50 years. I mean, I told my son about it. Like I said, I hadn't told anybody in 50 years, but I told my son, so he knew. But other than that, I don't know if I told my wife.
But it is something that still keeps needing to be told because we keep coming across the same type of things happening over and over again. I mean, ICE over here, as I said, people don't understand how dangerous this can be toward democracy, toward the civilians, toward innocent people, and it.
You can crush fascism, but it springs up again.
Yeah, and people are not aware of how really scary it is. And I've been doing a lot of reading about the Colonel's coup, which is, but to be able to hear it from your viewpoint, it's like now I'm picturing everything that the scholars told me. But what you're telling me makes it so much more real. And these are real people that these things were happening to. And this was terrifying for anybody to witness. And I think that's what we need to make sure people understand. It's not just, well, this was this conflict and this is what happened. No, people were involved. People were killed. People were injured. People suffered.
Okay, so one more little story.
Okay, great.
When I was in high school, I guess maybe my French class or something, we went on a field trip, I think to New York City, to see a movie. It was in French with subtitles. The movie Z. And it was about, there was a Greek opposition leader who was assassinated, and there was a reporter who looked into it, and he investigated, and he got pictures of all the people involved. He had a camera, and he would just and get with the camera. A lot of times they didn't realize their pictures were being taken. He uncovered everything, including the military, the colonels, and then the information was released and the colonels were being indicted, and then they threw their coup. And at the end of the movie, the text said, of the thing, like the opposition, the people who had uncovered it, jumped out of a window while being interrogated. They died under unfortunate circumstances while being investigated. And it was just like, the movie, it totally sucked. But one of the things it said was that among the things that were banned in Greece at the time was the letter Z, because it meant he still lives.
Zoe. Yeah.
So in the men's room of the American Express building, I had a marker and I drew a giant letter Z on the wall.
Oh, bravo. Bravo.
I don't know how many other people, knew what that was about, but I drew a giant letter Z.
Well, the Greeks sure did. Wow. That's amazing, because it's like this movie sort of set you up for what was coming, and that was probably the perfect thing for you to put up on the wall. That's pretty wild that you saw the movie and then you actually had to live through a little bit of what the colonels were about. Mm-hmm. It was so good talking to you.
It's good talking to you too.
Thanks so much, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell the story again. As soon as you told me you wanted to, it was like a box long sealed in my mind reopened, and all the memories started pouring out.
Oh my God! Well, if there's any more, let me know.
Yeah, I think at this point I've covered everything. Yeah.
Well,
that I saw.
But you've done a service to the Greek people. Trust me, you've done a service by sharing the stories.
That it makes me very happy to do so. I have very great respect for the Greek people.
Yeah, went through a lot. They went through a lot. Mm-hmm. And you witnessed some of it. Many thanks to Sean Bryan for taking the time to talk with us and for sending the photos. He generously shared what were pretty harrowing experiences in Athens, and it was cool having his perspective as an adventurous 19-year-old American, witnessing what would become a pivotal moment in modern Greek history. Thanks for listening. Greek Like Me is a Stealth Greek production. I'm your host, Pamela Deodes Wood. Our producer, photographer, and post-production editor is Douglas John. Visit our website at stealthgreek.com for resources, photos, links, and more. You can email us at stealthgreek@gmail.com. We're on Facebook and YouTube. Our Instagram is Greek_like_me. Please rate, like, and subscribe. It helps us keep making content about Greeks and Greek culture. See you next time. Yassas.